There is a saying that I have said many times for many years, actually multiple decades at this point. The best boot is the one that fits your foot and fits your needs. If you can't understand that, you're never going to have a properly fitting boot or the one that absolutely works for you. It doesn't matter what brand it is. It doesn't matter what color it is. If it doesn't fit your foot, it doesn't fit your needs, it's not going to work for you. I cannot stress this point enough. This is the one takeaway I want you to have from this video. If you turn this video off at this point and just go by that saying, you're going to have a more optimized time snowboarding. But if you want to learn a little bit more about the history of snowboard boots, my history with boots, what you should be looking for in the fit, and what you might be able to do to rectify some of your problems, then keep watching this video. It is a video that the only reason I'm making it is because of the amount of misinformation and bad advice I have perpetually seen for the last decade plus online. And it seems that it's getting worse with AI and influencers. So I want to make sure that you guys are getting dialed in, because your boots are the most important piece of equipment you will own while snowboarding. You can argue with me about that all you want in the comments, but you are fucking wrong. If your feet are miserable, you're gonna have a miserable time. Everything else is secondary. When snowboarding first started, there were no snowboard boots. People were using Sorels and shoving old ski boot liners into them or customizing them in any way, shape, or form that they could to get them to perform. They had less ankle support, less arch support, and by and large, they were snow boots. Now you look at a snowboard boot and you can see that through 40 plus years of innovation, we've gotten to the point where these are the creme de la creme. We've gotten to a point where ankle injuries, foot fatigue have been minimized. And when you look at what snowboard boots were to what they are now, and the innovation in technology, materials, production, lacing options, waterproofing, design, it has all culminated in what I believe are the best snowboard boots in the world right now. Almost every major manufacturer is making a great boot. To find a bad boot is probably because you found one that didn't fit your foot or fit your needs. And I'm lucky enough that I remember where we came from in snowboard boots. I was one generation removed from the Sorels. That was my brother. My older brother had that. I came in and learned on Airwalks, which, if you remember that company, there was a time when they ruled the world. This boot allowed me to go and then move on to a Vans High Standard. Yes, the High Standard is that old. I owned them when I was a teenager. I'm 42 for reference. From there, Salomon entered the snowboard boot market. They revolutionized it. They really did change it. They took a lot of design aspects from ski boots materials and they made a better boot. And in that time, you can see that even Burton was catching up to them, and then Burton was making top of the line boots. And as you watch where they went and the back and forth between them and Salomon, you can see where there was a little bit of a stagnation with Vans. Then 32 came on the market with their Intuition liners, and that was revolutionary. And from there, we ended up with more boot companies. We also ended up with a lot of inferior boot companies. No one talks about Moro, Liquid, 5150 when they were making it. The old K2 boots, they were trash. K2 and Ride now are some of the top of the line boots. And you look at where Nidecker is going with things and what Salomon is doing with the reinvention, and where Deluxe has transformed from where they were to where they are. You can see it. There are some brands that still have stagnated. You go and you look at a Northwave boot, that's stagnation right there. And this history of it and what we've done, and the fact that we went from people basically just extending up a high top to make it into a quote unquote snowboard boot, to having people fully design and understand different materials for dampening, stiffness, the urethane that goes in there. It's like when Nike entered the boot market, everyone was like, these were so comfortable because they took a lot of technology from their running and golf and skate divisions and put it in there. But the shells of the boot were crap. And I can say that because I've got a lot of experience, and they sent me a pair. They were made with cardboard on the inside. And then you saw what Adidas did, and they tried to revolutionize it with their technology, and they failed. But the big thing is, through all this, one thing has remained constant. The best boot is the one that fits your foot and fits your needs. When it comes to your foot shape, no two feet are the same. They might be similar, but they're not the same. It's kind of like a fingerprint. And everyone's going to have different needs, and they're going to need different sizing and whatnot. And what you want to make sure is that you get the boot that properly is sized to you. So with your big toe, you want it just touching the edge of the liner when you're standing up with it and the boot is done up snug how you normally would. When you flex your ankle forward with your knee going over the toe, this should pull back just a hair so that there's a little bit of wiggle room at the end of the big toe. If you have more than a little bit of wiggle room, what's actually going to happen is your foot's going to slide forward in that boot. That's how you're going to lose a toenail. It's sliding back and forth. You're going to get yourself fatigued through the arch because it's not stationary. You're not locked down. You also want to make sure that the width at the forefoot matches up to that. If it's too tight, your foot is going to be crushed like this. That's going to cause arch fatigue. But you also don't want it so wide that your foot is splaying out like this and you're trying to grip everything. That is going to be an issue as well. Then on the back where the heel is, you do not want any heel lift. And I'm not talking like you're tied up snug in the boot, you're flat-footed, and then you're pushing with your toes to lift it. I'm talking when you're in there and you're rolling toe to heel, like you're locked in on your bindings, the heel is lifting or there's excess room. Because if you have heel lift, the boot is too big for you. Across the top of your instep, you don't want it crushing down on you. You do want it to gently caress over the top and feel like it's uniform. You want it to be an extension of your foot. You want it to be able to roll with you and move how you need it to move. You don't want your foot moving or going up and down before it engages. That means it's too big. Basically, like my hand is over the instep. When I move the foot, you can see my fingers are moving with it. That's what you want. But you don't want it so that it's causing any discomfort or it's mangling the foot or it's putting too much pressure. You have a lot of nerve endings across the top of your instep there. And like I said, no 2 feet are the same. Everyone's going to be different. Some people will have more feeling in there. Some people will have less. You have to find what works. Now, the one thing I want you to note is snowboard boots are not going to be comfortable right out of the box when you get them. You want a little bit of discomfort because they're going to pack out. Pack out refers to the liner breaking down on you, that you're going to end up with a little bit more space in there. Figure about 1/4 of a centimeter to a centimeter, give or take, depending on what type of foam they use, because not all foam is the same in every liner. But a lot of people do not understand the difference between discomfort and pain. So if they're in slight discomfort, to them, that's a lot of pain. Pain would be that you can't walk, you're crippled, your feet are cramping up. Discomfort would be, hey, I can feel this. It's putting some pressure on there. It doesn't feel exactly how I would want it to be, but I can deal with this. This will break down. This will pack out, if you will. And that's what you want. You want it to pack out. You can expedite that by getting it heat molded, but I'll talk about that more in a little bit. One of the things that I regularly see is the cost of snowboard boots being brought into the equation of when you are buying your equipment. As I say, the best boot is the one that fits your foot and fits your needs. Cost should be irrelevant. This is where you don't skimp. You spend the money to get the boot that fits your foot and fits your needs. Now, some people will be like, well, if I buy the best boot, in their opinion, the best being the most expensive, I will ride the best. That's not true. I have plenty of friends that are high-level riders that ride low-end boots. I also have friends that are very mediocre riders that ride very high-end boots. Why? Because those boots fit their feet and fit their needs. Notice that I am saying this again. I warned you about this. I ride a stiff boot. I like a responsive boot. I also ride a lot. Now, the reason that I get a stiff boot is a snowboard boot will never be as stiff as the day you try it on after you start riding it. It's going to progressively break down. It's going to get softer. It's going to pack out. The materials are going to crease. It's going to develop flex points. Now, if you ride a lot, and I'm talking more than 30 days a season, yeah, you might need something that's a little stiffer because it's going to pack out, it's going to break down. By buying it a little stiffer, that means that you're prolonging the life of it, and maybe that's what works for it. For me, buying a stiffer boot means that at the start of the season, it's more responsive. At the end of the season, it's a park flex, and that's where I want when it's soft, it's slushy, and I'm hitting the park more. Some people just like a soft boot in general, and the softer it gets, they're fine with it. I've got friends that go through 2 pairs of boots a season when they ride 150 to 200 days. They live in their boots and they know it. For me, there's been seasons where I've gone through 2-3 pairs of boots, and there's also been seasons where I've made it 150 days on 1 pair of boots. It kind of depends on the materials in there. It kind of depends on how hard you're riding. It also just kind of depends on the conditions that you're riding in. There's no right or wrong with this. I always see people that are like, oh, this boot's $200, but, you know, it's not going to work out for me because it's a cheap boot, even though it fit absolutely perfectly. Conversely, I've seen where people will only buy a boot based on a colorway. This is more prevalent with women, but I have had guys that do this and they're like, well, I want it in this orange or this burnt sienna or green or whatever it is. And you're like, dude, that is not the boot for you. It's going to hinder you. It's not going to help your enjoyment. You're telling me that you're getting pain in it when you're trying it on, but you want it to match your pants, your bindings, whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's a sticker on your Cybertruck. It doesn't matter. The big thing that matters is finding that boot that fits your foot and fits your needs. You want to find that flex that works for you. If you're a free rider, generally that means it's stiffer. You're a park rider, that means it's softer. You're somewhere in between. You got to find that. The other thing is stop looking at boot flex ratings like they absolutely matter. A 9 of 10 from K2 is not the same as a 9 of 10 from Nidecker or Solomon. The other thing is if you're 5'6" in a size 10 boot and you're not athletic at all, you're going to flex it different than me at 6 feet tall, size 10, who rides a lot. That is a very, very big thing that a lot of people don't understand. Your weight, your body's physicality and physiology come into play with how a boot will flex. If you got longer legs, shorter legs, that can affect it. Some boots have a lower cuff, some boots have a higher cuff. That can affect it. Articulated cuff, non-articulated cuff, BOA, speed zone, traditional lace, they're all going to affect how that boot flexes. So when you are in a shop and you are trying them on, you want to be thinking about all of this. Let's talk about outliers. And what I mean by this is it goes back to the whole idea that no 2 feet are the same. And we'll use me as an example here. My right foot is a 10 3/4. My left is a 9 3/4. That is a full size difference. So you would assume that I would probably ride a size 11 boot and make it work. No, I actually ride a size 10. So on my big foot, it's more cramped at the start of the season. And on my smaller foot, I have to build it up a little bit to suck up some volume. That's an outlier right there. There's something like 20% of the world's population that could just grab a snowboard boot off the shelf, throw it on and be like, yep, that's what I need. The rest of us, we might need a little bit of work, some customization. It's also like when you look at certain size runs in boots, they may skip a half size in some of that smaller sizes. And that's because maybe they're not doing a 1-to-1 sizing. 1-to-1 sizing referring to that every shell has its own mold. So it's a true to size. True to size, I use that term loosely, but it means that every mold has its own size run to it. If that's the case, sometimes you've got to be like, well, what are we going to do to work with this to get it to work? And this is where custom work comes in. And I've got a whole boot fitting series on that, and you just need to go watch those and I'll show you how to do it. Or you need to find a shop that actually does custom boot work, whether it's on ski boots or snowboard boots. Generally, I find that if they know how to work on a ski boot, they'll know how to work on a snowboard boot. The big thing is understanding if you're an outlier, and that goes back to the sizing. Are your feet almost equal? Everyone's got one foot that's a little bit longer than the other. It just means your arch is a little more collapsed. The other thing is stock insoles in snowboard boots are crap. I've said it. Even the highest end ones, they're still crap. Aftermarket is the way to go to get you better arch support and a better fit in your boot. Aftermarket insoles can have a lot of stuff going on with them, from different arch heights, different arches, different thicknesses. You have to find the one that fits your arch length, your arch height, and your foot width. Now, all of these are trimmed to fit, so you can actually cut these down. And I'll have a full video on these for you so that you can actually see what we're going to do. But I wanted to show the difference in just like the arch heights of these and like the lengths. These are all relatively in the same range of height, but you can see the difference in the length of these arches. It's going to kind of vary, and the best one is the one that fits your foot and fits your needs, just like your snowboard boot. With the stock insole, you want it to provide arch support to the foot, but if you're putting weight down on it and it's collapsing, you're not getting that arch support. You're actually fatiguing the foot more than it should. You ideally want this to provide you and cradle that arch. You want that to sit in there, so when you really hammer down on it, it's not. But the big thing is you want that arch length. So like with this, you can actually see that the arch, we've got too much gap in there. This arch length isn't right for this foot. We want a longer arch length. So what kind of aftermarket work can you do to a snowboard boot to get a better fit? There are multiple levels to this and multiple options. The easy one, heat molding liner. What this means is that the shop will stick it on a stack or put it in an oven, and that expands the foam through heat. They put you in the boot, you tie it up. You want to keep your toes slightly elevated, so you're sitting back in the heel pocket. You do not want to walk around in it. Any shop that tells you this, wrong, bad idea. You want to have your toes elevated, so you sink back in that heel pocket. As it cools down, it's going to mold that liner around the shape of your foot. You're going to be able to gain a little extra room out of the toe, a little bit of room in the heel pocket or the forefoot, depending what you need to do. All right, so we're about halfway through this video. Go down, give it a thumbs up, because you're actually learning something here. And if you haven't already, go over here, subscribe, click the bell, get those notifications. That way you're not missing any of our future programming. So should you buy your boots online? I am a huge advocate of not buying your boots online. Buy them at your local snowboard shop. Try on as many pairs as you can. You want to try on, in my opinion, 5 pairs of boots at least from at least 5 different brands. So that way you can kind of gauge which ones fit your foot, fit your needs. Now, I know not everyone has that option. And so this is where shopping online comes in. And I want you to understand, if you're shopping online and you're shopping from a bigger store that has a good return policy, that's great. Smaller stores, that's going to be a little tougher. And if you're doing Amazon, 9 times out of 10, that's actually a small shop on there that's selling stuff through Amazon because they don't want to create their own online web store. That's going to end up in a warehouse somewhere, and they're going to lose out on that. So I want you to think about that and really see if that's where you want to order it from. Now, one thing you can do that we provide is our boot breakdown series. We try to go through every boot we can, tell you the pros, the cons, what type of foot we think it would fit. That does not help you with sizing. I know, because you need to get sized. You want to use a Brannock. You want to make sure that you know the length from the back of your heel to your big toe, the width at the forefoot, how high your instep is, what your arch length and height are. A lot of stuff going into this, but if you know all this, you can get yourself more dialed in. Let's talk about some of the bad advice that I see that's really, really common. Things that people tell people believing that this is actually good advice. Double up on socks. No, don't double up on socks. If you do, it's not wicking the moisture away from your foot. It's creating an ice cave where it actually collects between that first sock and the second one. This is why your feet actually get colder. You're not getting that moisture away from there. So when it cools down, your feet get colder. This is a bad idea. And I love those people that are like, well, if you double up on socks, the boot will fit snugger. If it doesn't fit snug enough to begin with, it's probably too big, which goes into the next point I want to make. You should upsize on your boots. Never upsize on your boots. You do not upsize in your boots for most people. You want it to be snug. You want your big toe touching the end when you're tied up in the boot and standing there straight, and then you flex forward, and then it pulls back from the end a little bit. If you're a size 10 shoe, you shouldn't be in an 11, 12, or 13 boot. If anything, you could probably downsize a little bit because of the pack out in there. The other one that I see is, hey bro, I ride these boots. You should ride these boots. They're the best boot. Everyone's foot is different. You don't need to buy the same boot as your bro or the shop guy or anything like that. You need the one that fits your foot and fits your needs. The other piece of bad advice I have is that there's a lot of misinformation about the durability of boots, and people will actually be praising boots that aren't durable as being super durable, while good quality boots aren't. It's a kind of hit or miss, and you do pay for the materials that you get in the boot, and not all boots are the same. Plus, there's a certain percentage of every product produced in snowboarding that's going to fail. It's just going to have a loss of durability, of integrity, and it's going to fail. Some people find it and they're very vocal. Some people go, that was weird. I should probably try to warranty it or try to get something else in doing that. The other thing is people have this weird brand loyalty to stuff. Even if it doesn't work for them, they're like, oh, I won't support a ski brand boot. Dude, literally, Solomon changed the snowboard boot market for the better for all of us. And I say this as a guy that rides K2 boots. The only reason I ended up in K2 boots were they were the best boots that fit my foot and fit my needs at the time. I was in a bind and I had been trying on multiple pairs of boots before I was leaving on a trip. And it just so happened that K2s worked for me. And since that day, I haven't left them because they continue to work for me. Every time I try something else on, I'm like, this is a little off, this, like I can make this work. And last year was a big year for me because one of the former designers at K2 fucked up with making the Thraxis. Like they fit, but they weren't stiff enough. And I had to do a bunch of work to make it through the season. And I was juggling like 3 pairs of boots. So in the process, I went and I've been trying on multiple boots from different brands, and like Ride has something, Nidecker has something, Deluxe has something. And that's the thing is like I went out and I tried them on, but they couldn't match the total fit that I'm used to. And I'm like, this is a little weird. This is a little off. So it wasn't exactly the best fit for my foot. And I'm still testing stuff to see what might work for me in the future, because if the Thraxis isn't going to work, I've got to be prepared to move on to something else. So what are reputable brands when you're buying snowboard boots? Pretty much every brand that's a legit snowboard brand that makes boots is solid. You can see that. Your Burton, your Solomon, Ride, K2, Battalion, Nidecker, Vans, 32. They've all been in it for a long time. It's hard to find a brand that really sucks at making boots. Now, you might not find one that fits your foot and fits your needs, but any real brand, for the most part, is investing in footwear. There's obviously different durability issues, quality, different foams in the liner, and how they're going to pack out. And these are all variables. And if you don't find the one that fits your foot or fits your needs, you're not going to get in the right boot. But what I am seeing is a lot of these price point boot companies coming out, launching crap through Amazon, Alibaba Express, stuff like that, where you can just order it and it's drop shipped to you. These ones are questionable at best. From what I've seen, some of them are just using old molds. It's crap. Like if we want to talk about someone trying to be a reputable boot brand and they're not, Information Garage. It's an old Celsius mold. You can see it. It was one of the shittiest boots I've put on my foot in the last 20 years. It was absolute crap. And this kid that runs it is a fucking idiot to begin with. I don't trust him. And the boots are just shit. And that's the thing. Like, would I trust them? No. Like, if you've never heard of the brand, probably shouldn't trust them. And if you go and you ask anyone that snowboards if they've heard of the brand and they haven't heard of them, you probably shouldn't trust them. All right, so you can tell I've got multiple pairs of the same boot through multiple generations here. Some of these are covered in dust because I had to dig these out. But I've ridden every generation of Thraxis since it came out. It is the boot that I've had the longest run of use with since I started snowboarding. And I kind of ended up in the Thraxis by happenstance. I had ordered a set of T1 DBs at the time, and they messed up my order and sent me Thraxis instead. And I was like, triple bow? All right, well, I guess we're going to try it. And the fit was actually better in the Thraxis than it was the T1 DB that I was in, which DB stands for double bow up. Now, I get these comments from people, you need to get new boots. Dude, I get a new pair of Thraxis every year. Sometimes when they're on sale, which a lot of you guys are buying them now. This is my nightmare that I can't get these on closeout anymore. I would have multiple pairs of them. I get this boot because I know I can get at least 150 days out of it. Most of them I'm actually able to squeeze to about 200, which is awesome. That's what I like to get out of a boot. And each one has its pros and cons, and there's been a logical progression going through this boot, but it's remained the boot that fits my foot and fits my needs. Now, this past year, there was an issue with a slight redesign in the Thraxis with the materials, and it wasn't as stiff. I was folding it right through. So I went to talk to the rep, then I talked to Jay Stone, and then I got in touch with the boot designer, and I was able to send him a whole video breaking down the progression of every one of these Thraxis. I was able to go through them and go, hey, when we started with this boot, it was here, then we went to here, then here, then here, then here. And there's actually boots that aren't up on this table with me right now. I actually had some sample Thraxis boots that they were testing out with some new materials that I ended up giving back so they could cut them apart and look at what was going on. And they had these weird solar cells in the toe. So the sun was supposed to hit and then it was reflecting off the internal reflective foil, the heat reflective foil in there to keep your feet warm. Those buckled and were just like pulling apart and whatnot. And they were a sample that never got produced. So my history with Thraxis is long, but I always think it's funny when I see people be like, because of the reviews, because I always say that I wrote it with my K2 Thraxis boots and my Rome Black Label bindings. Everyone's like, you need to be riding different boots. Those boots have to be so clept. I'm not denying that there aren't ones that are horribly, horribly clapped. I mean, you look at some of these and they've seen better days. I buy the same boot year after year because the consistency in the fit in the materials is pretty much there. I know what I'm going to get. I know how long I can push them. I know when they start to pack out where I'm going to have to do a little more custom work. And that's the consistency that I need for product testing. That consistency translates over to how you ride. So if you found a boot that absolutely works for you, you know it in and out, get multiples of it. Put some dead stock in the closet. That way you don't have to worry about it. And you can just keep running that boot. That's what the Thraxis is to me. That's my history with it. It's been the best boot that fits my foot and fits my needs until this past season. And it wasn't that it was a bad boot. It just wasn't giving me the stiffness that I needed at that section of the season. It was more like how a Thraxis rides when I've clapped it out. It would just have more ankle flex, which is great in the spring when I'm riding park a lot. I rode a lot of these boots, and I've held on to them in case something happened. I'd always have a backup pair that maybe it's clapped a little bit, but I could make it work. And it actually paid off having this information, talking to K2 itself and talking to the designer and going, hey, we need to fix this feature on this model was better than this one, and this one actually did this better and whatnot. It's that logical progression. That's what I like about it, is that I could take all that data and all those experiences and go to K2 and go, hey, we got a problem here. We need to fix this. And it was cool talking with them, and they were really open and receptive to what was going on. And they were like, holy shit. No, our job is not to make this high-end boot inferior. We want to make it better, and so we screwed up. We're going to try to fix that for next year. Truth be told, I don't know if they will, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I don't want to have to jump to a new boot brand, but if I do, been looking at Nidecker, been looking at Deluxe, and there's even a possibility of a Solomon in there if it can fit my foot right. Got to keep an open mind when it comes to different boots. I know 32s don't fit me. I know Burtons don't fit me. Vans definitely don't fit me anymore. Ironically, I was riding Vans before I went to K2. I really wish that Rome would have made boots because I think that they had something that was offering. The Battalions, not quite where I need them to be, but I think that they'll get there. I'm curious about that new Union boot as well. I can't wait to do a boot breakdown on that. But the big thing here is when you find a boot that you like and you know it works and you ride a lot, pick up a backup pair and hold on to it. So that way, if they discontinue it before you buy a new boot, you don't have to be freaking out. You can give yourself a little bit more time before you have to go and find one that works for you. Because believe me, when I broke my Vans Fargos and was hunting for boots in my size before I left on this trip, I tried on something like 37 different pairs and I couldn't find anything that exactly worked. And it was to the point I was just going to go buy a smaller size of Fargos and do some heel wedges, some heat molding, and then I was going to try to punch the toe out a little bit to get them to fit because I was in such a bind. And it just so happened that Rob Howland, my K2 rep at the time, was like, hey, I think I got a boot for you. It'll get you through this trip. And I went down, we heat molded them. I rode them on that trip. I came back and then I rode them like another 40 days and was like, this boot is way better than what I had. And from that T1DB, I've worked my way up to the Thraxis because I needed something that was a little stiffer, that was going to last a little bit more because I was riding more and more and more every single season. I actually have a pair of Thraxis, and I believe it's this one here that got 280 days. That's a hell of a lot of time out of a boot, like to push it that far. Now the liner definitely shit the bed, but because I had a backup pair of liners, I put new liners in there. And that's a whole other thing in customization that we can talk about later on. Like what we're doing over here? Want to support us further? Swing on over to Angry Snowboarder VIP and become a member. Sure, I could tell you more here, but I got a video over there that explains it so much better. All right, so we made it through this video. You probably learned a little something about the history of snowboard boots, my history of snowboard boots. Hopefully you learned, and the big takeaway is that the best boot is the one that fits your foot and fits your needs. If you did not learn that from this video, may God have mercy on your soul. There is nothing more I can do for you, and you're gonna have a miserable experience out there snowboarding. Now, if you need more stuff about boots, we are redoing our Boot Fitting 101 series, so you can watch the old ones, or if at the time you're watching this, the new ones are up, go check that out. That'll help you dial in your fit. And if you need to know what you're getting into, we do have our boot breakdown series, so you can understand what features are on what boots and what you can kind of expect from it. Hopefully that helps you guys out. If it doesn't, stop watching this channel. That's the best advice I can give you.